alaikum. My name is Feras Hemdan. I study at the University of Michigan, Dearborn. I major in history and education, and inshallah I want to be a teacher one day. I grew up in Franklin County, Massachusetts. My mother is American. She's Christian, Protestant. Where I grew up, it was a very not Muslim friendly area. It was, complete Christian and Jewish background. Where I went to high school, I was the only Muslim or Arab, any ethnic person there. I think we didn't have, much diversity there. It was very typical, white American. My mother, she was a very devout Christian. So, she, I remember when I was a kid, she always had a Bible right next to her bed, on her nightstand. Every day, I'd go into her room and I'd see it there. And every now and then I'd look through a few verses here and there, and some would make sense to me, some not. I guess you could say, I was raised, more so in a Christian family. We celebrate Christmas every year. I still go home and buy presents for my brothers and sisters, my mom, everything, Easter, all of this stuff. My father, he's Muslim, but I wasn't around him too much when I grew up. I was mostly around my mother. My mother actually worked at the same school I went to, the elementary school I went to. And my father, he worked nights mostly, so when I go to school, my dad is home. I wouldn't see him. When I come back, my dad is gone. So for the most part, I didn't get a good full exposure to Islam the way I could have. So for the most part, yeah, I was around my American mother. All my friends are American, Christian, or Jewish. So when I started, hearing a little bit about Islam during 9/11, I was like, okay, let me, look into this. Let's see how it is. I started, going on YouTube looking for debates between, Christians and Muslims. So that was pretty much the beginning right there. That's when I started, looking into Islam a lot. It took me a long time. It wasn't like a very quick, a one-day thing where like I heard this and all of a sudden I became Muslim. It took a while. It was not easy getting the Christian, ideas that I was brought up with and around. It's very tough when you grow up in an environment that is all, American, Christian, Jewish, or agnostic, or whatever you want to call it. It's very hard to go against it and believe in your own thing. And if you do believe in it, you kind of want to conceal it a little bit. You're like a little embarrassed sometimes to share this in front of friends, because they'll think, oh, he's like a terrorist, oh, he does this and that. So for a while, I'd say like a few years, from I'd say about age 11, 12 until about 14, 15, I was very confused, undecided. I still was holding on to this, belief Jesus might be God, because it's very scary when you think, if you don't believe in Jesus as the Son of God, you're going to go to hell for this. It scared me a lot, because you're taught this all the time, and you hear it all the time: original sin, original sin. But alhamdulillah, I kept researching and listening to all these lectures. So when I first was like, okay, every question that I've ever asked, about Islam being legitimate, I felt like I got an answer for it. And anything about Christianity that made it seem more shaky, it was confirmed. So it came to a point when I was I'd say about 15 years old, when I was a freshman in high school. I was pretty confident that, I'm going to be Muslim. I took my shahada, I told my father that, I believe in Islam, and everything like that. But there was a little issue. At that time, where I lived, there is no Muslims. I never met a Muslim before except for my dad, let alone a Shia Muslim. So I had no, networking. I couldn't ask this person, how do you pray? How do you do this? Everything I had was online, and at that time in my house, we only had one computer, way back when we had, the desktops. We didn't have laptops and, smartphones and stuff like that. So we had one computer, and there's 5 kids in the house, and my mother and my father. So, it's very hard to, get the computer for a long enough time to want to research what you want. So every time I'd go on the computer, I was very concerned, who's watching me. Like, I didn't want my mom to see what I'm, listening to, because I know how, upset this would make her. I didn't want my brothers and sisters to see it, because, they think like, they'll tell on me. They'll tell my mother and say, oh, look what Feras is listening to. He's listening to some guy with a beard and a turban, probably telling him to do something violent. So I remember I used to wake up. I would pretend I'm going to sleep, okay? I would wait until my father gets off the computer, or whoever's on the computer. I would go downstairs around like 2 a.m. and that's when I go and I start listening to lectures, just so I know nobody would see me, anybody in my family. I would listen to all these debates between, Christian priests and ministers and, Sunni Muslim scholars. And I did that for a long time. I remember my father would catch me and he'd be like, what are you doing? Go to bed. You have school in the morning. But I was addicted, honestly. I was very addicted. I wanted more and more knowledge, When you learn one thing, it makes you want to keep going and going and going, just the curiosity, it gets to you. So during that time, I was practicing as a Sunni because I didn't know any Shias. And all of the stuff that I found online was, from, Sunni websites, and I prayed like a Sunni, I did everything. It came down to, one time where my dad, I was talking with him, about some things, and my dad's like, no, this is not what, Shia do, this is what Sunnis do. I was like, well, how do you know what Shia is believing is right? He's like, it's just right, do it, don't say this, it's a Sunni way. So I was like, okay, let me give, my dad's, he comes from a Shia background. Let me give his faith, a test. So I went online and I looked up Shia Islam. And, the first thing I see is blood everywhere. I see all this stuff, and I'm like, okay, this is like, what is this? This is Islam. Like, it's not the Islam I've been, listening to, on these lectures from these guys. I like what they're saying better. This doesn't make sense. Why are you doing this? But in the back of my head, I was like, wait a minute. This is somebody else talking about Shiism. This isn't a Shia talking about Shiism. Like, it took me back to Christianity when I would hear, my friends in elementary school saying, Islam is this, Islam is that. So I was like, okay, maybe these guys are just like, these kids I grew up with, they don't know anything about it. They're just saying what they've heard. Is it necessarily true? I want to hear it from the person's mouth, So I just kept typing in, like, Shia Islam. I was trying to find, some websites that, like, they looked legit, that looked like, they're from, like, somebody who was a scholar or, and whatnot. And, I came across a video, Misconceptions of Shia Islam, that, it didn't, I didn't become Shia because of that video, not at all, but it opened up my, thinking. I was like, oh, okay, well, there's explanation for that. It's not this simple, So one time, when I was, when I first met, my Muslim friends for once in my life, they were mostly from Ahl Sunnah. I didn't see them for a while. I used to visit them every weekend, and I used to hang out with them all the time. We do all kinds of things, play basketball, go to movies, typical American lifestyle. We're with an Islamic surrounding. I come back, I go visit them after not seeing them for a couple of months, and I come back, they had long beards down to their chest, They wear dish dasha all the time, and they don't go to movies. It's bid'ah to go to movies, and they completely changed. They became very, Wahhabi, and they invited me over. They took me down to their basement, and all of them were there, about like 8 people, and they sat me down. They told me, for us, you're our friend, and we care about you, and we don't want you, going to hell because you're Shia. And they would tell me, for us, listen, you don't have to be Shia because your father is Shia, there's, you can be Sunni, it's fine. And I start smiling at them. I'm like, these guys, they don't know anything about how I grew up. I told them, I said, listen, man, this never bothered you before that I was Shia. Why does it bother you now? And for your information, I'm not Shia because my father is Shia, It says in the Quran, when the Prophet was trying to, bring Islam to the polytheist Arabs, they say, will you believe on what I tell you? And the old Arab guys, they say, no, we believe what our fathers believe. So I told him, I'm not a Muslim that just believes in Islam because my father is Muslim. No, I'm Shia because I went out, I did the research, I learned, I put them both on scales, and I chose Shia Islam. I chose Ahlul Bayt. And they start getting into questions like, you guys do this, you guys do that, you worship the imams, you do bid'ah. I told him, tell me, give me one hadith, give me anything that tells me we worship the imams. Explain to me. And they, of course, they can't say anything, they don't know anything. And then they ask me, oh well, what's the problem with Ahlul Sunnah? Why are you Shia? And I said, listen, man, go read the books, read your own books, read Sahih Muslim, Sahih Bukhari, all these books. You'll find the same hadiths that Shia quote from the member, that so and so did this. These are not just Shia hadiths. These are very Sunni hadiths. You guys just don't talk about them. You don't bring them out. I'm not following something that's a conspiracy that that was just created from. They say Shia Islam is created from a Yemeni Jew. This is like everything that we have, all these hadiths we have from, Imam Jafar Sadiq, Imam Bakr, Imam al-Baqir, Imam Qadim alayhi salam. All of these imams we got from a Yemeni Jew. I mean, come on, man. Don't you believe such foolishness? Give me the proof. After that, I was very interested, and then I was like reflecting on myself. Am I, practicing Islam the way it should be? Am I doing anything wrong? Because at that time, all I'm doing, the only knowledge I have is what I'm listening to online. I don't have books on, fiqh, jurisprudence, all of these, how to do wudu and stuff like that. At that time, I found some website online how to pray. It was the Sunni way how to pray, how to do wudu, the Sunni way how to do wudu, everything. So, I kept reflecting on, like, am I doing everything I'm supposed to be doing right? And then I started trying to find, like, the Shia way to do this, Shia way to do that. This is the first time I heard about Imam Hussein. I had no idea about, the tragedy of Karbala. I didn't learn about that. All those, 2-3 years, I was listening to all these lectures every night, 4 or 5 hours a night, watching, listening, all these things. I didn't know anything about, the tragedy of Imam Hussein. And, coming from, a Christian upbringing, the idea of Jesus being crucified is really, inside of you, it resonates with you. It's a very, when they go into detail about how this happened and that happened, it's something very powerful that, I understand some Christians, when they really say they love Jesus, when they're thinking about how all those things he went through, yeah, I can understand that. And it is actually something that you can really hold on to. It makes your faith very strong. And when I was looking into, Islam, and I was first only came across Sunni Islam, I didn't really have like a tragedy, a person that went through a severe tragedy, really, like a gory tragedy that resonated with me, that I could be like, yes, this is this is the person that I follow. He gave up this and he did that. And when I learned about Imam Hussein, what happened to him in Karbala, I was so, it hit me. It was like, I was thinking to myself, if Christians, if they knew about, what happened to Imam Hussein in Karbala, this is, I'm not trying to say, Jesus is any lower than Imam Hussein or anything like that, but what Imam Hussein went through in Karbala and what Christians say about what happened to Jesus on the cross, you can't compare the two. Imam Hussein, he lost most of his family, he was decapitated, his infant was killed, all of these things, and it happened, all at once, okay? And Imam Hussein he's a man of God. He was the rightful successor, to the throne after Imam Hassan. And I looked at that and I was like, how can you not talk about that? How can this not be one of the first things you want to show to people? I thought to myself, if Christians knew about what happened to Imam Hussein, they would come to Islam right away. And that's honestly, what really opened the gate for me. When I learned about what happened in Karbala, I was like, wow, this is big. I have to be a part of this. I have to commemorate Imam Hussein. I have to talk about Imam Hussein. Since I don't know anything about what happened in Karbala, I was wondering to myself, what else don't I know about? What else was concealed from me, wasn't talked about? I want to know more now, because why is the Prophet's grandson, getting massacred by the so-called leader of the Islamic nation, and they're not talking about this? And especially, he's the leader of the Islamic nation did this, and you're not saying anything about it. Okay, there's some problem going on here with the history. So I started researching, about the history of Islam. I go into the Prophet's family because I just learned about Imam Hussein. He was slaughtered. I want to know what else happened to the Prophet's family. And from the lectures I've heard Sunnis talking about Shias, they would always say the Shias exaggerate. They only love the Prophet's family. Da da da. So I was thinking to myself, I'm like, what causes them to have this severe love? Because they always talk about how they cry and all this stuff, and I was like, there has to be a reason for why are they crying? What is this strong love that they have for Ahlul Bayt? I want to know. So I started looking, and then I came across, of course, Imam Ali alayhi salam, and Imam Hussein is what brought me into Shia Islam. But Imam Ali, he's what really kept me. Imam Ali, all of the hadith about him were so amazing, and again, it made me very angry. I'm hearing all of these beautiful hadith about Imam Ali, and they're not told. The character of Imam Ali is just so far superior to anyone else, and I didn't understand, why is this not talked about? So that's what really got me into it. After Imam Ali, then I started looking into all of the Ahlul Bayt, and that's when I was like, okay, that's it. Now I'm going to take a second Shahada. Now I'm, Ali and Waliyullah. It got me right there. And at this point, I was around 18 years old, about a senior in high school. That's when I found out. During this whole time, I was at home. I didn't eat halal meat. A lot of things I didn't know. At that time, I only thought halal means that you don't drink and you don't eat pork. I didn't know there's an actual method of how you kill the animal, and specific kind of like kosher for Jewish people. I didn't know that until I actually even came into Shiism. I went through so much detail in Shiism. They really went through all of this. So then probably one of the hardest things I had to do in my life when I started practicing Islam is when I had to tell my mother that I can't eat haram meat anymore. I can't eat the meat that you prepare all the time. We have to drive an hour and a half away to get halal meat. I can remember the day I told my mom that I'm going to start eating halal meat, it was one of my favorite meals she prepared for me was, steak, mashed potatoes, green beans. And I remember looking at it and I was like, this isn't right. I've been delaying it for a few weeks. I know I'm not supposed to be eating this. So then at the dinner table, my brothers and sisters were there. I told my mom, I was like, Mom, listen, I know you're going to be upset, but now, I have to start eating halal. And everything that I thought was going to happen happened. My mother was, of course, very upset. She told me, that's it, I'm not cooking anymore for you. From 18, this is when I started eating halal. Those first 2 years were very difficult for me. I started trying to go, this is when I got my license, so I had a little more freedom. And that's pretty much when I decided to do it too, because I can go out and get it. I don't have to tell my mother, get it. So my mother was very upset. She stopped cooking for me for about 2 years. My mother is a very strong woman. If anything, the character that I felt that I built was a lot from my mother, because again, my father, I didn't spend too much time around him. I was around my mother a lot. My mother was a very devout, Christian. She had very strong morals, and she was a very strong woman. Nobody would tell my mom, do this and do that. My mom had a lot of respect for herself, I saw a lot of characteristics. After I learned about, Sayyida Zainab alayhi salam, I seen a lot of characteristics that, Sayyida Zainab had that my mother, also had too. So I guess you could say my mom, a lot of Islamic characteristics that I picked up, I actually picked it up from my mother, from being around my mother so much. She was a very moral person. She, would never lie, never cheat. She worked very hard. She had 5 kids. She actually went against her family to marry my father, because my father is, an Arab, and my mother, the background she came from, they were obviously not exposed to a lot of Arab, Muslim, people from this region, Middle East. And my mom suffered a lot, went through a lot of struggle. And till this day, my mom has a very hard time thinking it, but I really respect and of course I love my mom. She did a lot for me and taught me a lot. When I was about 18, when I started, trying to get, halal meat and stuff like that, I wanted to go to a mosque. I felt very isolated. I was at home. All I do is I listen to lectures. I don't have any Muslim friends. I don't know anybody. Even if I'm going to a Sunni mosque, I want to go to a mosque. I have to go to, one. So I started going, and I met, a lot of people, Afghanis, Pakistanis, Indians, Iraqis. This time they're all Sunni. And I didn't care at the time. I just wanted to be around Muslims. I didn't care what affiliation they had. So, I came into a lot of contact with them, and the first thing you think when you start learning about Islam, you think that people that are born into Islam know everything. They know the basic requirements for Islam, they practice it, and they have all of this knowledge. And not only they have the knowledge, but they appreciate that they have that knowledge. This is what you think. You think every girl that wears a scarf is wearing a scarf because she chooses to, or because she wants to be a role model. You think they're all angels. But if there's advice I can give for any converts or any people that are actually entertaining the idea about Islam, is that don't look at the people who are practicing Islam. Look at the people who brought Islam. Look at the Prophet. Look at Imam Ali. Look at all of the Ahlul Bayt. Look at Salman al-Farsi. All of these companions and prophets. Because my first experience meeting Muslims, I had high expectations, and quickly they went very far down, and it's hard to come back up after you see Muslims that you expect to know a lot not caring about it, not eating halal when it's very easy for them. They have their mother and father at home cooking them food, but then they go to McDonald's and and me, I lost 30 pounds. I was like, I used to be angry. I would tell them, you know, I would yell at them. I'd say, listen, man, you know, like, I don't have this where I came from, you know, and other like people that are converts, they don't have this, you know. Like for you, you grew up in a Muslim family. It's very easy for you to stay religious and, you know, to practice the religion. You know, you don't have to be like a sheikh or anything like that, but you can practice the basics very easily. There's other people, they have to go through hell to become Muslim. You know, a woman who converts to Islam, she puts a hijab on. She has, you know, friends, she has family, you know, that are gonna say something to her. She has to go through hell to do this thing, and all you have to do is just, you know, do 1, 2, and 3 things, and you're not looked down on it. It's very easy. And you know, quickly I got kind of like an image, you know, that Feras is like the sheikh of the group, and it was very, you know, I was very annoyed. I was like, I'm not like, I don't even consider myself, you know, a very strict Muslim, but you know, these are the basics. You have to follow these. You know, these are the guidelines. So yeah, that was very difficult. Then I eventually I found, you know, I got a little annoyed after a while with certain things, having, you know, all of these Sunni friends that would, you know, go out to unhalal places, and you know, I'm like, okay, I'm around Muslims. I want to go to a Muslim restaurant. I want to eat, you know, meat. Finally, come on. So I went online and I just tried to find any Shia organization anywhere, some kind of a mosque, you know, Husseiniya or something. I finally found one in Boston, and you know, I tried to find an email of anyone who runs it. I finally found one. I sent one. I was like, is there any Shia community out there? You know, is there any youth program? Is there anything? You know, please, like, I live in this area, there's no Muslims, there's no nothing, please help me. And you know, alhamdulillah, like a few weeks later, I got a reply, and I was told, yes, there's one Husseiniya in Boston, and you know, you can come to this area, and I'll show you around. And you know, this was you know, a really great step for me. You know, this is when I found, you know, I met a lot of you know, Shia Muslims my age, mostly, you know, Saudi international students, Shia international students, and you know, they helped me a lot. They taught me a lot of things. They gave me some books. They showed me some websites for you know, certain marja, you know, picking, because I didn't know at that time you have to follow a marja. I didn't know what the concept was. And they helped me with a lot of things, how to pray, do wudu and stuff like that. And once again, I got very addicted. I wanted to learn more and more. I bugged them very much. I was like, okay, when you pray, do you have to have your feet, you know, like together? Do they have to be apart? Very detailed, because you know, I don't want to be looked at as like, you know, he doesn't know what he's doing. I want to practice it the right way. And you know, alhamdulillah, like when I started going to college in Boston, you know, I met more Shias, and you know, I surrounded myself in a group that was very well practicing, and could teach me a lot of things too.